Let me make a tweet to announce this as well.
Hey,
Let
hey.
me make sure I'm also on your channel so I can see what's going on. Perfect. And I'll remember to host you on my channel as well.
I think your mic is picking up a bit of static here and there.
Oh, is it? Give me 1 second
For
here.
just a moment. I think it's fixed now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let me know at any point if my audio needs work, and I will go and fix it.
Fair enough. Let's see, it seems to just static every now and then, but like not a consistent static, just a slightly popping static, almost like it's peaking a little.
Oh, strange. Okay, you know what? I will maybe go in and turn down my... I'll turn down my makeup gain by a little bit.
Okay.
And might be turn up my attenuation. Okay. Great. All right, I'll keep that open, but let me know at any point if it sounds funny again.
All right. We'll get started proper in a couple of minutes. Usually it's just, let people trickle in, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. I love the loading screen, by the way, and also the unique ones that you make for everyone that you interview. They're such a pleasure to see. I was looking through all your VODs today, so...
Because, yeah, for each interviewee, I normally just go through, take a look at their design as like, okay, what elements can I actually pick out and use for pixel art? Because it is a...
I love pixel art so much.
It is a very limited number of pixels, I guess, because I am... Let's see, it's pretty much Game Boy size is what I go for, roughly. Yeah. Game Boy Advance, rather. Because these are... My basis for pixel art is more or less the classic Fire Emblem games, actually.
I love the Fire Emblem games. Wow, I haven't touched any of the classics for a long time now. I mean, it adds to the charm. I like the limited pixel look. I also like that I'm standing behind the bar with you. That's unique.
I figured since, let's see, anytime someone with like a more servicey theme, I guess, comes up, then yeah, I'm like, do I shove them behind the bar? Yeah, why not?
Shove them. Love it. Hello, Hana. Also, hi, Dinah, and hi, you. Hello. So I'm taking a look at chat right now.
Hi. Hello. And yeah, for the sake of this one, I was like, need a bit more for this one, so I added the sparks. I was like, yeah, why not?
Oh, yay! My favorite. My unofficial Oshi marks. I use them so much that maybe I should just start incorporating them into my Oshi marks. Also, I just realized I've been watching your VODs on YouTube all day and didn't follow you on Twitch. Look at me forgetting to follow people. It's the, I think everyone can relate to this problem, but a lot of people I know have the exact same problem where we follow each other all on Twitter and we interact for like 100 years. We know each other super well. We get on Twitch and we're like, wait, I've never followed you.
That happens from time to time.
Happens to me so much. God.
Because yeah, I've run into a lot of people on Twitter. I'm like, they're interesting. Maybe I'll check out their content at some point. Toss them on a list. A couple of months down the line, oh, whose stream is this? Tunes in on it. Oh, I haven't followed them. Oh shit.
Like, oh yeah. Someone needs to make a script so that every time I follow someone on Twitter, I also follow them on Twitch. Please and thank you. That would make my life a lot easier.
Oh my. Alright then. Well, suppose let's get started proper then, in which case.
Let's do it.
Alright, so first up, something very simple. Introduce yourself, by all means.
Yay! So my name is Hiiragi Yuu. I am a host VTuber. I think this happens every now and then where people will call me Hiragi, which is perfectly fine, but Hiragi is my surname. My first name is Yuu. So if you'd like to be on first name basis with me, please just call me Yu-kun. Whatever suffixes you would like, all of those work for me. I am a host at the Starlight Host Club, and whenever you attend one of my streams, you are entering the Starlight Host Club and you become one of my patrons. I refer to my patrons and my followers as my kittens, and I always strive to have a nice, comfy, relaxing time with my kittens.
Damn, that's actually a very long intro and a very smooth one, actually. Yeah. In terms of long ones, yes, that one is quite smooth, because some of the other ones I've had are either very short, straight to the point. If not, then they get a bit rambly. This one, good timing, good pacing.
Oh, yay! Happy to have your good review.
Let's see, how would you contrast that against, say, if someone raids you? What kind of introduction do you give in which case when that happens?
I was actually that was basically what I say when I get a raid. Every time I get a raid, I introduce myself as the host VTuber and I talk about my streams and the Starlight Host Club. I added in the tidbit about my first and last name because I get that very often on first meeting. I write my name in the Japanese order, and so most people will approach me and call me Hiragi. And so I was like, I might as well clear that up right now.
Fair enough, fair enough. You know, I might as well throw in this one, because it's been a while since I've asked about naming schemes, I suppose. What exactly got you to the name Hiiragi Yuu?
Oh my god. That's a really good question. A lot of I think we may go over the same information again later in terms of like concepts and thinking of YouTube of VTuber concepts and VTuber names. But all of my entire concept and my entire like what little I have for lore, I came up with when I worked out one day in like early March. Something kind of tough happened in my life, and I had to like work it off. I had to work off the stress. So I went for an extra long gym session, and then came up with everything on the spot. There's really not a lot of reason or like rhyme or reason to to anything I came up with. Hiragi has always been a surname that I thought was really pretty. Hiragi, for everyone's reference, it means mistletoe in Japanese. Mistletoe is one of the fragrances that I really like and I use quite regularly as well. So I was like, that's fitting. Yu is the kanji means kindness, which is a quality I really value and I would like to spread. And so I took that on as my first name, and bam, that's it.
Fair enough then, in which case, because, let's see, a lot of names that I've asked about here and there, some of them have quite the long basis, others are just, it was their handle that they've used for the longest time.
Yes, that's right. I see a lot of names with a lot of lore built in, and I'm always like, wow, that's so cool that you can just like start talking about your backstory when you get asked your name.
Let's see, personally as a writer, I actually do hate the names that have an extremely long, extensive meaning behind them. Mainly because I'm more so for characterization during the writing, instead of characterization built into the name scheme itself. So if you
That's a very interesting point.
Because how I find it is, if you have a first name, that's usually good enough to ID a character. When you throw in a last name, there usually has to be a specific reason to have that last name.
It's interesting because it kind of I'm not a writer by any means, but I'm very passionate about like storytelling in all kinds of different mediums. And I think I like very firmly stand by the show don't tell methodology of storytelling. And so I think that's very, sometimes you do like 60% of the work by naming a character something that they exactly, they are, where you could have just shown us that. I would have really liked it to see it demonstrated,
Demonstrations go a much longer way than just outright explicit mention, anyhow.
Yes.
Normally
Agreed.
sticks in the mind a bit more. You could have a random GI say, oh, that sergeant's an asshole. Or you could have that sergeant punch someone.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I love that. That's the kind of like, I think I'm more into visual storytelling, but yes, absolutely. So I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking about like how a movie would play out. But I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Let's see, because one thing I find in this VTuber sphere is, it's one thing to call yourself a specific kind of character or background or whatnot. It's another thing entirely when you manage to completely demonstrate it and carry it through.
That's true. That's a really interesting point too. I think the um, the thing about creating a VTuber avatar is you are simultaneously creating a character as well as an avatar that you have to place yourself in. Oftentimes, you can get very much lost in the first part. So you could be creating a character that you personally really like and you're interested in, and you want to run with it as far as you want. And you sort of have to step back and look at that step two and say, like, can I fill the shoes of this current character that I'm writing?
It's kind of the scriptwriter slash actor's kind of dilemma, I suppose.
Oh,
When it comes to
yes,
that kind
yes,
of
yes.
affair. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's see, for that particular reason, I go very lore light, essentially. So that I don't necessarily have to matter too much about the characterization. I can just act out myself as talkative bastard, I suppose, but
Yes, exactly.
because,
I
yeah.
have there is a inside joke that we have at the Starlight Host Club where I didn't come up with any lore for my VTuber. I'm just kind of like myself. And so when I did my debut stream, my lore slide had one word on it. It just said host in all capitals, in like large font. And so people will there's a bot command. If you do exclamation lore in my channel, the bot just says host in all caps. That's all the lore I have.
Alright, fair enough. On that sticking point then, let's see, what exactly inspired your design then?
I have I drew out my design or sketched out my design for my model mama, Emmy. Myself, I am an artist. I'm not a good artist, but I make do. And so I sketched out my design. Nothing has changed very much between my sketch to the final design. Not a lot has changed. My inspirations come from three anime slash video game characters in particular. Lots of people have noticed already and have said this to me. First character being Haruka Tenno from Sailor Moon,
Oh my.
Sailor Uranus. Second character being Kashima Yu from Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun. And third character being King from King of Fighters. And so those
Ooh.
are the three characters I listed in I included a sketch on a document, character bio document to my mama. And so those are the three characters I listed as precedents. And that's how we got started.
Damn, alright. Fair enough. So what got you to choose the host theme in particular though?
I picked the host theme. There's a short and long answer. The short answer was that it is. I think I just like the flashiness and the kind of like over the top way that host clubs have been characterized in anime culture. I think it's really like interesting, and it allows me to do a lot of really flamboyant things. The slightly longer answer is I really like the feeling of being somebody's sort of or weeknight getaway. I don't have to know my clients as like people. I don't have to spend 24/7 with them, but if I could spend a meaningful amount of time with them, relieve their stress, we have a good time, and then they leave feeling more refreshed for their day or for regular life, I think that's a very romantic concept.
Fair enough. Yes, it is a very romantic concept, and one that you managed to pull off quite well anytime that I seemingly
Thank
tune in
you.
on your streams.
Thank you. I'm flattered.
In which case, yeah, the next question is quite straightforward in regards to that. Do you play into your lore very often? Do you hold
Oh.
to this kind of theming very strongly?
I don't find myself making an active effort. I think part of it is just the kind of person I am. I do think that there's just a couple of very like surface level things that I do, such as like when I say welcome to the host club, when I call people kittens, but everything else I do is quite just normal to how like I am as a person. And so I think it's slightly serendipitous. I didn't put that much thought into it when I first decided my VTuber concept. But it is very serendipitous that I was able to choose a concept that I kind of just naturally fell into.
Alright, Fair enough in that regard, because, yeah, the best kind of acting is the very natural kind, I find. And that tends to be the pursuit of acting, usually. Making a, let's see, what was the particular phrasing for this one? It was making the audience believe in a beautiful lie was the sense for acting. But in this
Wow,
case,
that's so beautiful. I've never heard that before. That's I love that. I do think that's I think a lot of people think it's a little facetious or sad, the concept of like going to a host club and finding like temporary company, but I personally think it's like awesome. I think you should find solace in company and joy whenever and wherever you can. And so I think the concept of like the host club is like exactly that kind of concept to me, is like believing in a beautiful lie, but not in a way that like it hurts you. I think believing in beautiful lies sometimes it's beneficial.
it gets you past some of the more hardships, I suppose.
Yes, for sure. I think like finding things to help you cope and finding things that will help you even though they're not long term is definitely nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, as long as you can get through in some capacity, then it's fine, I'd
Yes, yeah,
say.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point to make. I say this a lot to people, but I also always like to tag on the little a little reminder at the end is that like as long as you're able to find progress and be able to like better yourself as a person after that, then I support that wholeheartedly.
Fair enough, because, yeah, I normally fall under the logic of at least take one step forwards if you can.
Yes, exactly.
You
Better
don't
than
always have to be
staying
like,
still.
yeah, you don't always have to be like running or sprinting, but if you can walk along, that's fine, really.
Yeah, progress is progress.
Oh, yeah, the Streamlabs bot has been broken for a couple of days
No,
on my
no.
stream for whatever reason,
Streamlabs
so
bot. Oh
yeah.
no, that's okay. I've had that happen before. My bot just like gave up one day, and my mods had to like pretend to be like role play the bots for one session.
Oh, yeah, that was,
Every time I call a command, they would just like put the link up, and I'm like, oh, thanks, guys.
yeah, that was last night for me, actually. Anyhow, let's see. So this next one is quite straightforward too. So what drew you to VTubing specifically? You could have gone into any other medium per se, so just releasing VODs, any other content. Why VTubing?
um, the first and foremost reason for getting into VTubing, I think, is I would not be able to, or actually no, I should start a little. Sorry, I should start at an earlier point. So I used to create content before. I did covers on YouTube, and so I would only upload videos with my singing, and possibly sometimes a PV. More often than not, I didn't have PVs. It would just be still images with my singing, and it was fine. It was a great time, but I felt like I wanted to connect with people more. I felt like it was weird that I was sitting here putting out content and people are following me, appreciating me, but I like they know all about me, what kind of music I like and what I sound like, but I don't know anything about these people. I may recognize their names if they comment on my videos often, but I don't know anything about them. I want to get to know them more. And so streaming naturally became kind of an avenue I wanted to take. I started doing a little bit of art streams, but they were nerve-wracking. I couldn't handle, I think I did maybe 2 art streams in total before I just gave up. I went on a hiatus for a few years and then came back this year in March. Started VTubing because I wanted to make good on that kind of like, I want to get to know my audience kind of goal. And I liked the appeal of VTubing because I don't think I would be able to do face cam. That would be impossible for me. I would either have to be a voice only streamer or have to find some sort of avatar. And I think VTuber or VTubing is like an extremely expressive form of taking on an avatar. So
Fair enough, in which case, fair enough. Because, yeah, usually opted is the avoidance of facecam, etc. But in that sense of just getting closer to your audience, yeah, I can see that working out.
It's been amazing, honestly. I think just getting to connect with people and chat, seeing regular names, and not only seeing them in the form of like comments that was left hours ago, but being able to chat with them real time, connecting with people on Twitter as well, being like multi-platform really helps. It's been amazing. It's like everything that I hoped for before. It just didn't feel like an equal platform. I never felt like it was right to put myself on a pedestal as a content creator who is just like distributing content and then I disappear into a cave again and then return a month later with more content. Like I want it to be a more parallel form of conversation. I want to be friends with people. I don't want to be some sort of like mysterious entity that no one knows about. And so that's been VTubing and streaming has been like, first of all, like way more enjoyable than I first thought. I was really scared of streaming when I started. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. But it's been way funner than I expected. So
Alright, gotcha, gotcha. In which case, let's see, I'll throw one of the curveballs here.
ready to
So,
catch.
what are your
My hands are
thoughts?
open.
What are your thoughts on parasocial relationships, the kinds that build
Oh,
throughout streaming and whatnot? You've got
um,
yourself, and then you've got your audience, but there's potentially still that wall between the two.
it is. That's a really good question. I think about this question to myself very often. I try my best to keep myself and everyone at arm's length. I do want to connect with people more, and I want to be friends with people, but I also I think there's a very significant difference between like knowing and enjoying someone's company and also having, or not also, but like there's a difference between that and then having someone be like an inner circle of friends, where you care about them as like a human being that you personally are acquainted with. And that is a distinction I want to make very clear. I care about a lot of the people that consume my content that I've gotten to know through my VTubing journey. And I consider them very close to my heart, but also I need to make sure I make that distinction between them and people that like friends that I've spent years with, or family that I have personal like investment and care in. I also think that we actually talked about this before stream a little bit, when we were just chatting before stream started. But I think parasocial relationships as a concept is changing quite a lot in this day and age. Before, when you have people looking up to actors or celebrities, it's very much a one-way content consumption relationship where you watch someone on TV or in the movie theaters and you think that they're fantastic, and you start to develop this idea that you know them and you're infatuated with them, and that they are a personal acquaintance of yours when they really aren't. They don't know your existence. But with the rise in like social media and how accessible it is, a lot of the people that I connect with the most in my audience are people that I talk to almost on a daily basis because social media allows me to. And so it's definitely like a changing concept, and I'm very wary of it. I'm not confident that I can manage it myself, and I ask for help, and I sort of like reflect on it quite often in my own head.
Because yeah, there is the hearsay out there. I'll put it as that. That after you have maybe a dozen simultaneous chatters, it becomes significantly more difficult to keep up with each individual conversation going on. And that way you then start getting into more chat as a soup rather than chat as individual people.
It's it's something that that's like that particular concept is something I think about quite often as well. I get right now my chat is it's manageable, and I see a lot of familiar faces, and I sort of start to recognize their names and the way they talk. And so it's quite manageable at this point in time. But I kind of obviously, like as a content creator and streamer, I like and enjoy growth, and I would like to reach farther than where I am right now. And there comes a point where I think I will need to sort of check back on myself and ask, like, Are you still able to do this? Are you still able to keep up with chat? Or do you have to start letting go and not like tire yourself out looking at and trying to pay attention to all the individuals in chat? I do try really hard though. Chat interaction is something that really matters a lot to me. It plays into my goal earlier of connecting with people, and so I want to be able to do that for as long as I can. Kitten soup. Yum.
Fair enough, fair enough. Let's see, let's move this away from necessarily the live streaming aspect of things that you do, and let's say talk about your covers then, in which case. So what kind of process do you go through regarding covers? Start to finish, how do you put out a cover?
It always starts with I have my process is just listening to songs, and when I like them, then I have some songs when I like them and I am very up for covering a song. I have a very, very vivid mental image of how I want it to sound and how I want it to look like, which I kind of have like the full package deal like formed in my head already before I start tackling it. It's always been my process, and in the past it's made things a little bit hard because it's the reason why I picked up mixing myself. It's because I've started to I asked a few people to mix for me, and they would never come out the way that I envisioned in my head. And so I just started mixing myself so I can do it myself and make it sound exactly how it sounds in my head. And in terms of videos, I never really reached out to people for videos in the past. I was too shy to, and commission culture wasn't really that much of a thing in the community that I was in a few years ago. I'm really, really happy now that I am active in the VTuber community, and like commissioning people for assets and for work is a norm. I really enjoy that because that means I'm like giving people the compensation they deserve when I ask them to do work for me. My biggest problem before was just like, am I good enough to ask people to do work for me? Like, am I overstepping my bounds? Is it worth their time to do anything for me like that? But nowadays I'm just like, you have your rates and I'll pay you for your rates. And we'll make something beautiful together.
Fair enough, fair enough. That's an interesting reason to get into mixing, honestly.
Yeah. I have this problem. I think I'm pretty sure it's like a personality trait. I do a lot of things myself because I have very specific standards for them, and I don't think it's like fair for me to put these standards on other people. And so mixing is a really good example where like I think if I were to hand something to someone else and they mix it for me, I'd have like a laundry list of corrections. Whereas back when I started learning how to mix, I was like, if I just learned this now, I don't ever have to do this again. I just do it all myself. And so, yeah.
Fair enough. Because when I went through your covers, I was like, mixed by Hiiragi Yuu. And I looked through each one, I was like, oh, wait, it's all self-mixed. Oh, God.
I've been trying to reach out to more people. I don't know how to do very... my weak point is like EDM and effects heavy mixes, and so I've been trying to reach out to more people for that kind of projects just to get outside of my comfort zone. And so I'm excited for those projects to come together, but for simpler mixes where I can manage, I'm still kind of a little bit stingy about it. I'm like, ooh, no, I want to do it myself.
Fair enough though, because your mixes are quite smooth. They come off as
thank you.
Very natural, not like overly processed, I suppose, is the way I'll put it. But
I'm actually so happy to hear that. I'm genuinely happy to hear that. I'm very much like in terms of like mixing style, I'm very much like a minimalism is better than too much kind of person. And so I spend a lot of time sort of meticulously doing timing, and EQ is a thing that I spend like a lot of time on. I want it to sound good before I start applying compression, before I start putting effects on things. I didn't have the money to buy Melodyne for the longest time, and so I would just keep singing the takes until I got it right. Instead of like, so if I like had a note in there that sounded a little bit funny, nowadays, if I'm in a hurry, I may just be like, oh, I can correct it in post. But when I first started singing, I would just do like a million takes until I got it right.
Oi.
Oh, redeems.
Yeah, a lot of redeems all of a sudden.
Oh my goodness.
Raina, thank you. And let's see, stretch, hydrate, mix a drink. Let's see, did I have a button lying
And
around for
change
this?
hair length too.
Yeah. Alright, 1 second here. Was it this one? I think it was this one.
Cute. And 1 card fortune.
Oh boy. Didn't expect this one during an interview, but nonetheless. Let's see, I'll just pull the top card of this deck and see what we get. Alright, the Chariot. Huh. Okay, Chariot in a nutshell. Most people read it as some kind of domineering strength of some kind. I normally read it as support from others, considering you are sitting on top of something that is giving you power. So, Var, in this case, perhaps you've got some other fellas supporting you right now.
I'm peeking at your redeems, and I really want to save up enough to redeem You Disgust Me. So I'll have to sit at your bar more often.
Boy. Boy. Alright. Oi,
Get in my
Raina?
back. Oh, and you too.
Raina.
Y'all are real ones.
Oi. Raina. Perhaps that may be a step too far here, no? Hey. Go get some rest, you workaholic. As for the music man, oi. You know, music man, you should get some sleep as well. As another you here, yes, go get some sleep. Okay. Back to the usual programming, I suppose. Alright then, because yeah, with that kind of mixing and whatnot, since you did approach it from that more minimalist angle and literally redoing your takes over and over, goddamn, I will say, goddamn, because the way I normally put like melodyne and tuning is it's your vocalist's equivalent of, say, Photoshop, pretty much. It lets you take less photos, lets you do less takes in total, because the general process is you record a bunch of takes, you comp the takes, so you filter out which ones are best and whatnot, then take those and then process them further. If you were just redoing each individual take over and over and over again, good God.
Life has gotten easier since I was able to afford Melodyne. But it does it's good progress, or it's not progress. It was good practice. I think it was good practice for like I have a lot more confidence when I do karaoke streams nowadays, and I think that's just based on the fact that I am used to singing into a microphone and hearing myself. A lot of people actually ask me that. They're like, how do you handle listening to yourself? How do you mix your own vocals? And I'm like, you just get used to it. I think a lot of people who first get started aren't used to it. I'm sure yourself, being experienced in radio work, you're very experienced in listening to your own voice and picking out the things that you need to correct and the things that you like, the things that you want to boost. But for people who are first getting started, or people who haven't, who are like have gotten into music but not quite the technical side of music production, often are like, how do you handle listening to your own voice?
How does one put it for myself? I just have monitoring on almost 24/7 these days.
Yeah.
So if I'm on a microphone, I am most likely hearing myself regardless. And the time I turned off monitoring recently, which was last night because I was having a thunderstorm during a stream. So all I'd hear every time I speak up was the harshest amount of rain. It felt very wrong for whatever reason. I was like, huh.
Doesn't it?
It feels so hollow all of a sudden. It's like, something's wrong here. Something's wrong here. Oh, yeah. Monitoring had that much of an effect, I suppose.
Yes, it does. It feels almost suffocating when I turn off monitoring.
Yeah. That is the general feeling. So let's see. When it comes to mixing and whatnot, what DAW do you actually go for? So I've heard people go with, say, Studio One. I've heard people go with FL Studio. What do you go for?
FL Studio was what I learned a lot of things on, but the DAW that I attached to my hip and will probably never jump away from is Reaper.
Oh my, huh?
Love
Okay,
using Reaper.
Reaper. That's not what I quite expected. Actually, no, that is somewhat expected. It's apparently really good for vocal work, so I've heard.
Yes, very very versatile. And the UI is so simple and so straightforward. I'm a Reaper stan through and through. I remember talking before on a stream where I was like, if Reaper disappeared or they went under at one point, I will cry.
Fair enough. Fair
The
enough.
Linux of DAWs. Wow, what a good line. I'm gonna steal that from you, Dinah. I love that.
Actually, yeah, it pretty much is. Good God. All right. Yeah. 'Cause it's very, very easy to work around, but then when you dig into its guts, you do need to go pretty damn far.
I used to use when I first started doing. I can't even call it audio work back then because I was in high school and I was just doing it for a hobby. I used Cool Edit, and I don't know if anyone knows what Cool Edit is, but Cool Edit is the DAW that Adobe bought and later rebranded to Audition. But I used Cool Edit / Audition for the longest time. But Audition is very much, you knows what I'm talking about, fist bumping you here. But Cool Edit / Audition is very much a preset reliant DAW, and you can tweak with things, but not nearly on such an intuitive level as Reaper. You kind of have to dig deeper. You have to really make more than a few clicks to get into more. Like even if you just wanted to like simply EQ something, you actually need to like you need to click a few more times than you would need to in Reaper. And so it's very reliant on presets, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. So as soon as I moved to Reaper, I never looked back.
Let's see. So the radio place I worked at, we used two things before uploading like interview VODs and whatnot. Because generally, you didn't want the full candid experience when you uploaded a podcast for an interview. You kind of wanted to cut it down, cut out the rambling, maybe the random breaths or whatever that the interviewee took, that kind of stuff. Make it a cleaner experience. So generally, we swapped between Audition and an in-house version of Audacity.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean by in-house?
So Audacity is open source for the most part, so you can actually plug in some extra stuff as you need. And we had something of a programming team on the side that was just like, oh, what kind of features do you need? And we were just like, okay, we need this, this, and this. Can you incorporate these directly into Audacity for us? And they were like, okay, give us a bit. It'll take maybe a week or two. We'll come back to you for build, see if that's what you're after, and from there we'll go.
That's so nice. I was not aware Audacity was open source before this. I've never touched Audacity. It's my dirty, dark history as a audio enthusiast. I've never touched Audacity. I've seen it. I know what the UI looks like. I've just never used it or touched it. But that's so cool. That's so like incredibly like cater made for your needs.
Because yeah, we had very specific needs that Audition didn't necessarily fulfill anymore. So we had to switch over to something a little more versatile, a little more our speed, because we also had to teach volunteers very quickly how to work this kind of stuff. Because we had the main hosts, we had the producers, and then we had the weekenders, pretty much.
I would have loved to be a volunteer in that setting if I were, or when I was young, I'm sure. I found like I tried to look for a lot of work and volunteer opportunities, or just opportunities to sit in on recording sessions with people quite often. And so I actually kind of miss being in the studio. I haven't been in a studio for a while now because of everything that happened last year. I really, really miss sitting in a studio, that kind of like almost deafening sound treated space of a studio. And like it's like kind of warm because there's carpets everywhere. I miss that so much.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months since I've been in a recording studio. It's, yeah, God, it is something to miss, definitely. In which case, then, let's shift onto this very, some people see this as an extremely simple question, others for some reason see it as a deep philosophical one.
Oh, okay.
So what does content creation mean to you?
Oh, you're right. I think I'm on the team that thinks this is a pretty philosophical question.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Content creation, its definition has changed for me personally over the years. In the past, it's always been a sort of getaway, burying my head in recording and mixing a song and then producing what the video would look like. Is something to lose myself in, and I can sort of forget the things that happen during the day, whether they be hardships or stress. I could just lose myself in music and in content creation that way. And so it used to be sort of an oasis for me. It's changed a little bit since then. For context, I went on I think it's about 2.5 years to 3 years hiatus before I started VTubing.
Oh my.
From part of it is definitely content creation burnout. I sort of like lost the joy that I had in content creation because I let like audience demand get to me. I saw that people wanted certain things that may not be what I wanted to make, and I wanted that kind of good reception instead of like joy in content creation. And so I started to strive to make things that people wanted, and that made me tired. It made me connect less with my content, and so I needed a break, and I kind of went on a longer break than I expected. But now that I'm back to content creation again, that definition's definitely changed for me. I think right now, with like a renewed sense of inspiration and like holding on tighter to my own values and what I think is fun, I kind of treat it as like a source of passion. It's like a driving force. It's what brings me a lot of joy now. It's no longer something that I dabble in just to forget. It's something that is on my mind more often than regular day-to-day life things now.
Fair enough then, fair enough. Let's say, if I'm to reflect it back onto myself, yeah, it was something of a getaway just being a writer, because anytime I'd feel excessively restless or whatnot, I would just take out pen and paper, start writing. If not, start typing. Either way. Anyhow. Then that just turned into a job. that was an odd job to hold on to, and I still get contracts from time to time, so... Oh boy.
Do you still get so you are still a professional writer now, and you still get like writing jobs right now?
I still get writing jobs. It is a very specific field though, because writing is actually my secondary expertise. My primary is actually game design itself.
Oh.
So most of my jobs in the freelance tends to be writing for games now.
Interesting. Oh, that's such a treat.
It's
Can I ask you a question? Actually, can I
yeah,
like
sure,
reverse
go
Uno
for
you?
it. Go for it.
Can I ask when you write, like if someone were to give you a scenario or like a very loose structure to write a scenario on, what are the things like if they were to get you to write it for like a short story versus if they were to get you to write it for a game? What are the differences between like what are some things that you would pay attention to? Some things that you would try to be careful about if you were writing for like a game versus just a book? Because I imagine books are just like straightforward storytelling, but for games, like what are things you have to watch out for?
Okay, surprisingly enough, I've got a decent answer for this one because it is something
Okay, perfect.
I've
I'm
asked.
so curious.
It is something I've been asked frequently whenever I do bring it up. And the main argument is just efficiency.
Ah.
So with games, you have the lowest words per minute of any medium. So you need to be clear-cut, straight to the point. You can't ramble on or go heavy into descriptions unless you are unless you're writing for like a structured RPG. But even then, most people want action over description. After all, games at the end of the day are still a visual medium. The words need to enhance what's on screen, not be the sole focus instead. So, how does one put this? In one recent example, you have dialogue boxes in an RPG, so text that goes across, blah blah. It'll normally tell of the scenario, maybe include a bit of dialogue here and there. This or that, just little actions that you can't necessarily show, per se. The length of these, you can only keep to about the length of a tweet.
Oh.
You had
Yes,
a
that's
rough,
right.
you had a rough 160 to 200 character limit thereabouts, and if you went over that, the text box usually looked hyper bloated.
Yes, that's true. I
Because
see that in a lot of like indie games, or like games out in for that are still out for beta testing and not quite like refined yet. But every now and then you'll just encounter a text box that is just like it's like words like text that are meant for ants to read, and I'm like, ooh, then it's a lot of text.
if I'm to point to an odd evolution in things to easily refer to, it's the visual novel scenes, actually.
Yes,
So,
that's exactly what I was gonna. That was my follow-up question.
oh yeah?
Visual novels are so they're known for almost over describing their atmosphere, and like delving a little too deep into the main character's mind and their inner workings. And so like how do you would you still write for a visual novel the same way you would write for a regular novel, or would you like change up the gear again for if you were to commission to write for a visual novel?
Okay, so classic visual novel, you would write it in the same style as a novel. The more modern style, you would adjust accordingly. So classic visual novels, okay, so I'll need to go over this particular concept because it is very important for digesting visual novels. For classic stuff, early 2000s and whatnot, early 90s, you had the classic view for visual novels where you had maybe an image in the back, but it was faded out and overlaid by a black background of which has all the text going down. So you were quite literally just reading a novel with the tiniest bit of sound incorporated and the tiniest bit of background or character. Think your classic versions of Higurashi, Fate, Tsukihime, I think Utawaru Rumono, early ones at least. Along those lines, yes. So you had a wall of text, functionally.
Yes. That's I was thinking about Higurashi as well, because I played the a little bit of the Higurashi, not the remade version, just the original by Ryukishi, and I was like, oh, that's the exact atmosphere that you're describing. It's just like it's a novel, except you instead of turning the pages, you're clicking on the screen, and there's a bit of ambient noise in the background.
Yeah, that's pretty much the feeling Higurashi has. However, in more modern, to make it easier to digest visual novels, to give them that more visual aspect to things, they've switched over to the ADV particular view, which is where you have the character portraits and just the small dialogue box down the bottom. That way you can see a lot more on screen at once. It's been pushed even further these days. Some visual novels incorporate, say, live 2D as well, and more animated characters. That way you can get more of their expressions and whatnot. Even some primitive lip syncing here and there. And overall, it just makes it a lot easier to digest because you're reading less at a time, less overwhelmed by the sheer words on a page.
Right.
And thing is, those kinds of visual novels aren't any less short, actually. Say something like Fruit of Grisaia, that thing is several novel lengths, even. Just reading over that. And you don't realize it because you go through it in the tiniest chunks.
Right. In like very manageable bite-sized pieces. And I imagine just like the changing of settings and like the changing of character portraits sort of refreshes your brain too, to the fact that you're like reading. Every time there's a new character portrait or it changes slightly, it's something you haven't seen before that kind of like stimulates your brain into going like, ooh, something new, and you forget that like you're actually reading like a book basically the length of the Game of Thrones series.
There's also a major difference when voice acting is incorporated. Normally,
Yes. Oh yeah.
you have to kind of account for that change in pace as well. It goes from writing it more like a novel and instead into writing a drama script, actually. And that's how a lot of the more modern visual novels will write themselves. They expect dialogue to take priority, therefore, yes, dialogue does take priority in those regards.
Yes, that's true. I think I've noticed that change as well. I play like a fair bit of visual novels, and I feel like I never noticed until I went back to see somebody play. Oh crap! What's that? What is that? What's that shit? I never played it myself, and so forgive me for blanking out here.
Oh, sure,
Very
sure.
very famous visual novel series written by Key.
Okay.
Theme song is Dango
Oh,
Daikazoku.
Clannad.
Yeah, Clannad, thank you. Sorry for forgetting one of the biggest VN series of all time. I saw someone go back and play the beginning of Clannad, and just the sheer amount of time they spend inside the protagonist's head, sort of just like going over his thoughts meticulously almost. I was like, wow, this is very different from like the more recent VNs I've played.
Yes, internal monologue tended to be a lot more important, mainly just for getting straight into character mood or setting, I suppose. It's the advantages of writing in first person in comparison, because then
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right.
you have a very direct perspective to be writing from, which is why a lot of visual novels will go straight for first person. In fact, it is extremely rare that you'll get an omniscient narrator in a visual novel.
Huh.
For one, it does save you ever having to animate the main character, usually.
That's true too. Yes, the point of view is yourself, and so you never have to animate yourself.
Yeah. And for two, yeah, it generally saves on voice acting as well. There are some companies out there, which do like voice acting their main characters, specifically any game released by Leaf, I believe it is. Well, Leaf / Aqua Plus in some cases, anyhow. They do like having more distinct characters as their mains rather than people to insert. So, for instance,
I remember hearing that a lot of it has to do with the level of relatability you want for your protagonist as well. For like obviously for very characteristic protagonists that have a very distinct like personality to them. You can write in first person, but you are still sort of just getting the privilege of peeking into their thoughts. But especially for the subcategory of otome games for dating sims, you want to write a blank slate. Like your ultimate goal is to write basically as close to a blank piece of paper as you can, so that whoever is reading can like very immersively project themselves onto this character.
self-insert and whatnot. Let's see. So
Yes, that's right.
The main things about a protagonist, there are, I believe, 3 dimensions that you need to try and cover. If you cover at least 2 of these, you've made a competent protagonist, a likable one at least, a good one. If you cover 1 of these, you've probably made someone quite terrible, and if you cover all 3, you're likely a genius of some kind. Okay, so there is likability / relatability. So how close a person can empathize with said character and follow along with it. So say your main character is an average Joe thrown into a supernatural situation. There you go, there's your relatability. The next one comes in the form of proactivity. So how active are they in the story? How much of a impact do they have on the story's running? Normally you want to try and keep this high, unless you're trying to write a bystander of some kind. And in the case of a bystander, you need someone else who shines all the brighter. So in the example of, say, Sherlock and Watson, you are hearing from Watson's perspective, but he's not the most active, he's an observer. Sherlock, on the other hand, is crazy, mad genius of a detective. And you get that impression all throughout Arthur Conan Doyle's works, essentially. And last on that scope, let's see, so we've covered relatability, proactivity. The last one is, I believe it was competency.
Oh, okay.
So how competent a character is. If they are proactive, but all they do is ruin the plot over and over, perhaps not the ideal. If they are mildly competent and can hold their own and stand up as a character in themselves, not having to always rely back on the rest of the cast, then potentially, you may have a very strong forward-facing protagonist. one of the few that covers all of these aspects to an extent. Let's see, Berserk's main character, so Guts.
Oh, Guts.
He's the closest.
Good old Guts.
The closest you're likely to getting someone which fulfills all three of these. It is questionable on the relatability angle, however, it is just that sense he's only human, nonetheless.
Yeah.
He is very
Interesting.
proactive, moves the story forwards, and he is very competent. He is not a background character, so to speak.
This is super interesting. I really like that last point because I think it's something that I notice in characters quite often. Competence. It seems that there needs to be a balance because overcompetent characters are really truly not super enjoyable for me me personally to consume. When I consume content and there's a character who is hyper competent, I sort of lose my connection with the story, and I think maybe it takes away from that first point a little bit, the relatability. When they're past a believable point of competence, that's when you start to lose that relatability.
Yes, it is a very delicate balance to try and strike. After all, it is very difficult to reach all three of these at once.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're likely, unfortunately, writing yourself into... God, I hate this term, honestly, because it is thrown out way too often. You're likely writing yourself into a Mary Sue, essentially.
Oh, wow, I haven't heard Mary Sue as a term in a while, but
Yeah,
yes.
I dread using that term because it is often taken out of context and thrown all over the place. But yeah, generally, relatability comes in flaws, competency comes in strengths, and then proactiveness comes in the measure you involve the character in the story.
I haven't heard the term Mary Sue in so long, and now hearing it again and redigesting it for what it is, it also has been kind of my brain has latched onto the fact that it is like a gendered term. For some reason.
It is somewhat, yeah.
It would be great if we had a more neutral term for that flawed archetype, or not even an archetype, but just an occurrence, I guess, in writing. I just haven't used that term in so long. Wow, it just occurred to me.
Fair enough. It's not a term I often pull out, normally because the moment you do pull out, the discourse in any kind of writing kind of falls apart dramatically. And it generally becomes a mess. Instead, you want to carefully digest flaws and weaknesses in the writing instead, I suppose.
Yes.
Because yeah,
I say I'm nodding and saying yes, even though I have no experience in writing. I'm just
Because yeah, throwing generalizations and whatnot tends to be the worst case scenario when you want to make an argument, at least on the front of criticizing discourse and whatnot.
A Canadian raid.
Oh boy.
Hero, hi.
Hero.
Hello, Canadians. Welcome.
Alright, let's see if my bot is actually working once again, or if it's dead. Still.
I hope you come bearing maple syrup and what else is cool in Canada? Healthcare.
Hey.
What else? Poutine.
Oh
You
my,
made it to Canada.
Let's see, fellow was playing, from memory, Death Road to Canada. Zombie apocalypse game, kinda similar to Oregon Trail.
Oh, what? That's so cool. There's an Oregon Trail, except you travel to Canada. I want to play that.
Bit more action-oriented as well. You do play a group of survivors. There is co-op and whatnot. And you can customize the survivors to be your friends, I suppose.
Excellent.
Anyhow, yes, hydrate, I suppose.
Oh, thank you for the hydrate redeem. And also thank you for the raid too. Hero, if you need need some water or need some food, need a break, go ahead and take that. I hope your game was fun. I'm glad you made it to Canada. Welcome to Canada. Enjoy the healthcare.
Fella says,
All your friends
oh, your
died,
friends
hero.
died. Oi, 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 oi. We've got another one card reading. Give me just a second here. I'll pull from the middle of the deck this time. Yeah, bet.
Oops.
Let's see. So, the devil. Normally, this refers to deep desires, kind of sins and unpleasant kind of matters, so to speak. This is in the reverse position though, so it's not necessarily too bad. The way I generally read this is you're sacrificing something to gain something greater, so to speak. At what cost though? Hey. And as for another reading, I'll take from the bottom of the deck this time. Let's see. Alright. We've got the Fool.
Oh.
Card number 0. This one simply refers to infinite potential, if not the starting point. In which case, yes. Lilibana, you are just at the start of your journey. Good luck. And it has been a while since I've had to put on a mask. Give me just a moment here.
I am excited.
Mask was created by a certain mask maker out there, actually the only mask maker as far as I'm concerned in this community that I've heard of. The wonderful fella known as Masanori Kuro.
Oh.
Guy functionally makes all of his models, rigging, and he's one insane artist, essentially. This mask was an odd little custom design that I kind of just said, put together like an opera mask, if you will. And this is what the guy came up with. And one more, just for Shrimpy. Let's go. Second from the top of the deck, then. What do we got? Yabe.
Oh, another one.
Okay, the lovers. Normally, lovers refers to, pure love, nice innocent romance, wholesome stuff, generally, when you pull this card. This is pulled in reverse. You are going to want to subvert most of those. So either in reference to, say, an addiction, unhealthy romance, or just obsession, so to speak. So, Shrimpy, careful.
Be careful, Shrimpy.
Hey. Anyhow, let's get back on track then, shall we? Since we just had someone that I consider something of a linchpin in the indie community to have just raided, I'll pull this one out. What are your thoughts on the indie VTuber community, like as a whole?
Ooh.
Any grievances, any highlights, that kind of affair?
Yeah, I'm excited about this question. Also, belated apologies for doing a reverse Uno, and then we just got into a really long conversation about writing. That was a really enlightening conversation, though. That was very fun. Thank you for indulging me. But my thoughts on the indie VTuber scene, I have. Let me organize my thoughts really quickly in my head here.
Take your time.
It's one of the more, or not more, honestly, I should say most. It's one of the most outspokenly kind communities that I've had the pleasure of being a part of. And it's truly been a pleasure. It's an infectious kind of positivity as well. I think that oftentimes, so the kind of Twitter community that I used to be in was I drew a lot of fan art under another Twitter account, and a lot of the times when you're an artist and just sort of throwing out fan art on your own terms and on your own time, very, very rarely do people sort of perceive you as a person. They like and retweet your stuff. They appreciate it, but very, very rarely do people like reply. Replies were almost like unheard of in the community that I frequented before. And ever since getting into VTubing in March earlier this year, I found that people are really outspokenly like nice and kind and will like go out of their way to encourage and compliment people. And it's an infectious kind of community to be in, because I find myself and I found a lot of other people reaching out and doing the same. I think it's just that feeling of like, wanting to pay it forward. When I first started, when I first got my model back, I did a really quick, very quick and short voice reveal, and I got like an incredible amount of feedback on it. A lot of people like said that they liked my voice. And it made me realize how important it is to voice some of these things. I could consume content and think to myself in my own brain space, wow, that was fantastic. But if I don't say it to them, they'll never know, and they deserve to know. And so I think this is something that this community has taught me, and I want to pay it forward, and I want to pay it back tenfold. I want to carry that forward with me. And that's definitely I want to say like one cool thing and one uncool thing. And so that's the cool thing I want to say about the VTubing community. I think it's wonderful. It's fantastic. Super lovely, super positive, and super supportive. The other thing that I want to mention, I guess, is I think because of the sudden how should I say this? Because of how suddenly VTubing became accessible to so many people, many thanks to Denji and his development of VTube Studio, and also last year the boom in agency VTubers and how they rose to popularity and how they almost became like a nearly household concept at this point, or at least if you're in this kind of like sub-community, you know what VTubers are. And so they suddenly became very accessible, and I think that what I often see happening is some people want to be a part of the community and want to be a VTuber, but really, I think in truth, and like forgive me for being kind of in kind of armchair diagnosing people, but I think in truth a lot of people want to create an original character and an avatar that they can act as, and sort of take the character of, but they aren't really committed to going the full way with either doing some streaming or like creating VOD content or anything else that like sort of puts you in the content creation category. And so in that way, the word VTuber has gotten a little bit blurry in definition, I think. In past years, it's very exclusively been people who take on an avatar, a virtual avatar, and create content. But because of the boom last year and this year, I think it has taken on a looser definition. I see lots of people who I think just enjoy having a model, and they enjoy having a model to interact with, and it's almost like you know how people hang out in VR chat? I'm not familiar with VR chat, but I think it's a very similar idea where you can take on an avatar and hang out in people in VR space. I think that's what they're craving, but they're not quite getting to the content creation aspect of things.
Okay. Fair enough. Actually, that does drag out quite a few curveball questions I've got to throw at least. But both those answers, actually, so... prepare yourself, I suppose.
My hands are ready to catch.
Alright. So the first thing you mentioned on the realm of like very welcoming, very kind sort of community, there is the sense that perhaps there is kind of an underbelly to all of that, but nonetheless, do you think there may be a bit too much positivity? The way I put it when I phrase this question is, do you think there's potentially a toxic positivity problem in that you can't outwardly criticize anyone? You must always kind of err on that side of, oh, that's nice, or oh, that's good.
I think that is, it's a problem that plagues most subcommunities because nuance tends to get lost when you have when the numbers get high enough in terms of like how big the community is. There's not a lot of nuance that you can voice anymore without somebody latching onto something that you voiced and then sort of making the worst assumption of what you are trying to express. And so absolutely, I think that is something that is happening. But also on the topic of nuance, even though there is that sort of toxic positivity mindset that's floating around, even though that like is a problem that exists in the community, I think that you as a person, as an individual, as a part of this community, you can choose what to absorb and what to reject. you know. You can self-censor certain concepts from your life to keep yourself healthier. And you can accept just the things that you think will benefit you. I think that I really enjoy that kind of positive mindset that we in the community have and we practice on a daily basis. And I think it's lovely that we all like have room in our lives to give others like caring words, or just take the time out of our lives to say, hey, good job, you did great with this, you sound fantastic, or you look fantastic, or you worked really hard and it paid off. And I think that's the takeaway I want. And any deeper than that, I don't want to not acknowledge it exists, but I don't want to let it into my life. And I think that everybody has the right to practice this. I think everyone has the ability and the right to sort of self-curate what you let into your life.
Catering your own space, huh? Yeah, that's surprisingly enough not a take that I've heard in quite a while, I think.
I think that it depends on what kind of person you are as well. If you're a naturally more cynical person than I am, you will find a lot of the positivity sort of like passing by your eyes on a daily basis probably exhausting. It may depend on personality too. It would depending on what kind of person you are, you obviously will need to curate your own experiences differently.
Yeah, that is fair enough, because, man, I've seen some odd sides of this community, some even very heavy into the drama side of things. Good God.
One of the things that one of my goals is to sort of for people who follow me, I guess I want to curate my own timeline as a space where people can always expect to see something. It might not always be fun, but if there is a hot topic on the timeline that everyone is weighing in on, I bite my tongue and I hold myself back from doing that because I want people to be able to find a break somewhere. And so I want to be able to put out a tweet or have someone go on my timeline and like sort of take a breather from everything. They'd be able to stop by and see the things that I'm retweeting or something that I tweet that breaks the flow of what is happening. And be able to remind themselves, hey, this current hot topic isn't the only thing that's happening in the community. There's other things as well. You can also not look at these things if you don't want to. Yeah, Hero's got it. Hero's put out a tweet like that too that I really agreed on. We're not politicians, and we're not. People shouldn't think that it's required of us to put out our opinion or weigh in on our opinion on every single situation.
Yeah, that's a fair enough sentiment then, in which case it does play into your whole idea of yourself being something of a getaway. So that is very thematically consistent as well. I'll hand you that one. Good lord.
Woo!
As for the other side of things on the content creation and whatnot, and just having that character, so to speak, to interact with, that more so reminds me of the RP community rather than strictly the VR chat kind of community.
Oh yes, you're right. It's there's different levels of roleplay that go into different VTubers as well. I always like to bring up Lady Kimrai as an example of very RP heavy VTubing approach.
Oh yeah.
And then like a lot of us, I think, at least in the circles that I personally watch, are sort of on the other end of the spectrum where we may or may not be playing into a character. Most of the time, we're probably just being ourselves.
Fair enough. Because then there's let's see, you mentioned the line blurring for what a VTuber is. And if we go back and look at the history to an extent, let's say we had Kizuno Ai, which was just more or less your standard content creator, put out whatever they felt like, whether it was gaming videos, covers, music, whatever. And they had whatever company backing them, released a couple of other VTubers which went into their own niche fields and whatnot, and had different VOD content, not necessarily streams, so to speak. Then with YouTube incorporating streams and whatnot, Niji Sanji suddenly starts becoming rather popular, and they start having this idol group kind of mentality of, oh, we have a couple of characters we want to release at once, or a couple of people we want to release at once. Here they are in a group, and Niji-sanji actually does have distinct kind of little mini idol groups and whatnot for their covers, actually. And then finally we fast forward to the time of Hololive, and Hololive, good god, they play entirely into the idol thing, to the point
They do.
earlier in this community, where you'd have the whole debut culture, you'd have, oh, you need to be able to sing, blah blah blah, and all the extra idol-like elements attached if you wanted to be popular, so to speak. It was where that whole say-so debate comes from, because that's specifically an idol matter as well. And
Yes.
so that kind of built up a bunch of unrealistic expectations, I'd like to say, and kind of needing to hold that separate personality from yourself. Where the English side of things does come in nicer is in that ability to just necessarily be yourself and succeed. However, that comes more so in classic streaming culture instead.
Yes.
Where most people are like, oh, you don't have to be completely out there, you don't have to be lambasting your audience's ears with ridiculous amounts of hype every moment of your existence. You can just be yourself. That way we get people like, say, Moist Critical. Fella's relatively calm for the most part, unless he's screaming about something or outraged at something. And then on the other side of things, we have someone, say, like Tyler One, who's just getting mad at League the entire time.
Yes. The only thing that is the only emotion that he has is angry at League. I see that exemplified a lot in V Shoujo as well. I've always found V Shoujo to be a really, really interesting agency, because they straddle that line and they break the conventions in that Hololive kind of set last year, and the conventions that Hololive set weren't set because Hololive said so. It was because they were just they got popular at the right time. And they almost became an unspoken industry standard whereas they don't have to be. And so when V Shoujo popped in, I was really, really interested because we know a lot of these streamers already. They've just taken on an avatar, but they still are themselves most of the time. They may play into their characters a little bit, but most of the time we know exactly who they are, and they still act the same as before they were in V Shoujo. They're just a part of an agency now, and they hold no hostility with other VTuber agencies that may not approach things the same way they do. They collaborate often with other VTuber agencies as well as with indies. It's all very, very open-ended, and I really enjoy V Shoujo for that.
Fair enough, in which case, but yeah, I find that content creation, yes, the line is blurred to a very heavy extent. There was even that whole Kelly song which tried calling out all of the V-tweeters out there, and I honestly laughed my ass off when I saw that, because I'm like, this is brilliant, honestly.
It was such on top of it being a banger, that song came out at a time when I was still debating whether or not I should whether I should return to content creation. Actually, I was at the tail end of my of what was to be my hiatus, but I wasn't sure I was going to come out of hiatus. I wasn't sure if I dove back into content creation again, I wasn't sure if I could still find the joy in it. And listening to her song really helped, because I don't want to be the person in her song. She kind of like metaphorically kicked my ass with that song. I really appreciate it.
Personally, I liked that song mainly from just the sense of it hit at exactly the time it needed to, pretty much.
Yes, timing-wise, it was brilliant. It was amazing.
Like, goddamn, that was... some people called it, like, entitled or insensitive. I was like, nah, this is the perfect spot to reach it from, pretty much.
It is, for sure. I agree with you. I'm completely of the same opinion. I think I appreciate its message as well. No matter who is putting it out, having that kind of message put out it helps. It benefits the community. It's like reminding us to be productive and to be what we promised we would be.
Yeah, productivity is definitely one matter that I do... let's see. Do have relatively strong opinions of in this particular scene, but that's...
How so? Can I ask?
Mainly, I'm the kind that prefers that you move at a consistent pace, or at least always move forwards. It's why I have at least one interview every week. That way I kind of get myself into that kind of mindset of, all right, make this a part of your routine. Make this something that you know that you're good at, know that you're capable of doing, and then just keep rolling with it. Improve over time as you get through each of these interviews and whatnot.
I like that. I think that the consistency of having the same type of stream once a week, it kind of like it builds familiarity in terms of viewership as well. I personally I love going back to watch streams that like occur on a weekly basis, sometimes at the same time. It almost feels like you're a group of old friends just getting together. Like you see the same people in chat, you say hi to them, you see the streamer, you're familiar with the routine. It's all a very like it's a very comforting almost routine to fall into for both the streamer and the content creator. And the viewers as well.
Yeah, it is that. It is that home to come home to, I suppose.
Yes.
Anyhow, thanks for mentioning that, because then I can naturally lead into this next question. So, what kind of audience do you find yourself attracting? So, what audience do you appeal to? And if there are any members of your audience here, what kind of audience do you think you guys are?
Oh, that's a great question to address to if you happen to watch my streams and you're in chat, I would love to hear that. I would be kind of at a loss as to how to answer this question. My joke answer would be I attract kittens. But I'm not sure what type of audience I personally attract. I've never actually looked at that or like reflected on that myself. I know that a lot of people come for my voice, and so I would assume that they have good ears. Like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I personally don't really see a common point, but I think maybe from the outside, from the audience point of view, they may see more of a consistency. I just the only thing I know is that a lot of people come for my voice and stay for my voice. But I'm not sure where else the common points would be. Sunny says we're very comfy. I think we don't dig out drama, mostly like quieter streams to wind down to. Okay, yes, that makes sense. If you're looking for like a comfortable time to wind down, just to forget about things, then yes, I think you would enjoy my streams. Hopefully. Good ears, yes. Congratulations, everyone, for your good ears.
All right. Hydrate and stretch, I suppose. Thanks, Raina, once again.
Thank you, Raina. Also, hello, Fish. Fish, were you in chat earlier? Hello, welcome.
Well, but fair enough. Comfy feels, I guess. Because yeah, when I tuned in on your streams, it seemed that way for the most part. Kind of just that, comfy one-on-one with someone that's there to listen to you, I suppose.
That's so comforting to hear. That's I never know if I'm projecting the same kind of atmosphere that I would like to, but that is definitely the exact kind of atmosphere I would like to have.
Because yeah, it's relatively consistent throughout all of your streams, I find.
Hopefully. My work schedule makes it a little bit hard for me to schedule streams on the same days every week, except for Sunday. And I've been feeling the effects of the Sunday stream. Like the Sunday streams are really pleasant, and they get more pleasant as we go along because it's the same people showing up. We have breakfast at 10 a.m. PST. And it's almost, someone mentioned last time in chat that like, it feels like we're just like friends getting together for breakfast. And I usually have breakfast for about an hour and a half, and then we go into playing a game called Omori, which has a bulky set of trigger warnings. And so I always warn people, and if they want to step out after breakfast, they're welcome to. But it's like such a pleasant feeling to be able to stream at the same time, see the same people, catch up with what they're doing and what has happened in the last week. And I almost wish I had like more consistency in my schedule to do that.
Fair enough, in which case, fair enough. Omori, eh? Let's see, I know a cousin of mine was obsessed with that game. I never really got too far into it myself, so...
It's very, I've always wanted to play it. I know that the music definitely attracts me the most. The soundtrack is fantastic. And I've heard that it makes some very, very compelling writing choices as well. Like the game is, the scenario itself and the characters are written really well. I didn't really feel it truly deeply until last Sunday. Last Sunday, I kind of like stumbled into a scene that was so emotionally compelling, I just started crying. And and I was told that was going to happen too. I was like warned, and you were never really prepared to get like emotionally gut punched. And so last week I felt it, and I was like, ooh, okay, I know what people love about this game now.
Well, fair enough, fair enough. Emotionally resonant work. Let's see, I've heard a fair few opinions on emotionally resonant works. Mainly that sometimes that gives it value. Or that's what gives a work value, if it can emotionally resonate with someone. Whether that be in pulling off that kind of tug at your heartstrings kind of feeling, or whether that be complete and total outrage at the work.
Yes. That's actually super interesting because, like, ultimately, it's kind of like the argument, like, even negative press is press, right? All kinds of press brings attention to you. And so in that same vein, emotional reactions from your consumers are emotional reactions. Like, they can be negative, they can be positive. Either way, it's going to make them stick in their mind, whether they like it or not. And so even if it's something that pisses them off, it'll stick in their mind. It'll do the trick.
If there's one bloody good example of that, it's, let's see, No Man's Sky. On release, that was a game that promised a lot, didn't deliver on 90% of it, and pissed the living hell out of everyone who was hyped for it.
Yeah, that seems to, I mean, like, No Man's Sky in particular is a great example, but also I feel like that happens quite a bit in like AAA game development. I think a lot of the time, part of it is definitely the developers, but then the other part is also with big name remakes, like Final Fantasy VII, which was and also what was that one game that got remade? Duke Nukem got a remade at one point, and people really look forward to it. And it came out and it kind of disappointed like every single person who was looking forward to it. And I think part of it is because like your memory of these games live in like your rose-tinted past lens, and like you're never going to be able to relive that again. And so having that expectation of the remake is a little bit unfair.
Ah, yeah, it's the nostalgia glasses, essentially.
Yes, exactly.
Anyhow, give me just a moment. I need to close a window because someone decided to take out a power tool, and you may hear the occasional sawing in the back. So
I heard that earlier. I was like, is that my static? I was like getting self-conscious.
Apologies for that. Just give me one moment.
No worries. How are you all doing, chat? How are you all doing on this fine evening? I didn't realize so many of you guys were in chat earlier until you all spoke up. Like S, hello S. Godly, I know you were here from the beginning. And Fish. Sasori, hello. Is it after work time for you? It is a relaxing evening. It is. It's an weekend evening for most of us, I think. Or weekend evening / morning. Daytime? It's afternoon for Echo, so. Sleepy.
Let's see. What point was I particularly on just a moment ago before I started hearing sawing? Or rather, it's the particularly annoying sound of when metal meets metal.
Yes. The sharp sound of metal battling another metal for dominance.
Because yeah, with nostalgia bait and remakes, generally it's a decision by someone higher up in a sense of, oh, this is guaranteed to be popular and make a quick buck, even if you're just capitalizing off an old audience. Case in point, the Disney remakes.
Oh, yes.
Those may be seen as terrible films from a critical perspective, but from a marketing and business perspective, they're bloody amazing. They're making them billions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just goddamn, that kind of stuff is, man. Like,
The kind of like guaranteed audience work also like most of the time kind of falls short. I'm kind of in particular I have a very specific example in my head right now, and it's the it's or actually I guess it's not that specific, but like a lot of video games get anime adaptations,
oh
and
boy.
most of the time they are kind of disappointing because video games have the benefit of having like multiple routes and also like few hundred plus hours of gameplay where you can explore and get to know the characters and the plot, but the anime
Yep.
is usually one core. And so you get like really really for lack of a better word, and I'm sorry for the profanity, but half-assed adaptations that are there just to fill the hole of there being an adaptation, and they rely mostly on the fact that they're fans of this video game that will come and watch it no matter what, just so they can like re-experience or relive the characters.
I think there's very few exceptions to this rule for the most part. Let's see. So, for an example of something that was terribly done, we can simply look at Blaze Blue getting its adaptation. That was Blaze Blue Ultra Memory. Good lord, that was awful.
Yes.
A lot of reused animations, a lot of lazy shortcuts taken by the studio. Yeah. If we're to look for
What an absolute disgrace, because Blaze Blue is such a lore heavy game too. There's
yeah,
so much to
for a fighter, it
explore.
is ridiculously heavy in terms of lore.
Yeah.
If I'm to mention one that was a surprisingly good adaptation, all things considered, it would have been the God Eater adaptation by Ufotable. It actually
Oh, I've
covered.
not watched that.
So the main character would normally be something of a blank slate. In the case of how Ufotable handled it, they gave the main character a rather distinct backstory while still managing to keep the original plot intact. If anything, they managed to enhance it a fair bit.
Impressive. Ufotable has a very respectable resume of very well done adaptations. I think that's almost kind of become their specialty at this point.
Normally with Ufotable, they go above and beyond. In the case of, say, even the recent Demon Slayer, oh boy, reading through the original is something of a trip, but it is also just shonen that is executed decently well, but still falls into a lot of the shonen pitfalls. Because of how much extra pizzazz Ufotable does give it, though, holy hell does it stand out.
Yes, exactly. I've always found it to be like a very like cut and dry shonen series. And then like watching the anime definitely enhances that experience, because we all, assuming that we are all like weebs that are familiar with like Japanese genres and their conventions, you know what to expect from a shonen series. But getting that kind of like visual treat, that eye candy, to reward you on top of like to almost to distract you from the fact that a lot of the conventions and their plot are like very common. It like almost just makes you not think about how incredibly shonen it is.
Yeah, it is incredibly shonen. There are plenty of last-minute shonen power-ups, sudden shonen twists which would only come about in a story that needs to be written on a week-by-week basis, that you can't go back and edit. There are some dropped plot points here and there. There's all the typical things that you would run into, but at the end of the day, Ufotable manages to add that much flashiness to it, and add that many memorable moments, that it largely doesn't matter, because the way most people will remember things, not necessarily sweeping overview of a whole, but rather those very distinct moments that stand out. And Ufotable is fabulous at recreating those. Particularly for Demon Slayer, it was episode 20, I believe, or episode 19, towards the end, that whole
Yes.
flashy scene. That is one panel in the manga. Literally
wow,
one panel.
I did not know. That's so interesting. What?
Yeah, in the anime, they go complete and total ham with it. It is like, it's at maximum 1-page build-up and then straight into it. For the anime, they
Wow.
took so much time out just to enhance that experience. And that's
And
where
it's become an iconic scene at this point.
In the manga,
It's
it feels
crazy.
like a last-minute shonen power-up. Here, it feels like something that's emotionally resonant and a gut punch. And that music that swells up just towards the end of it was just like, God damn it, Ufotable. You managed to add way too much to this. Like, it's insane the amount that multimedia can enhance something.
It's definitely that I think that's what makes it doubly disappointing when adaptations don't follow through, or like they feel clearly hollow in terms of like effort put into translating into a moving visual medium. Is that like translating something to a visual medium is it's exciting. It's not something. It requires thought and passion from people who already know the source material, and then knowing that that was not done for something that you're passionate about is quite disappointing.
Like the easiest example to pull up in this case is The Lord of the Rings, for example. Big budget, old as hell, plenty of cultural expectations thrown into that one film. For the most part, they knocked it out the park because they made the entire trilogy into something digestible.
Yes, that's true.
Because originally, that whole prologue for The Lord of the Rings lasts a very, very thick 30 or so pages, and is simply called On the Subject of Hobbits. And it goes on for 30 pages about their entire culture, all of their little nuances and whatnot. And my first experience reading it was falling asleep by about page 20.
Oh my god.
Yeah, just me in high school years picking it up, being like, oh, this will be a fun read. It's Lord of the Rings. It's Tolkien. It should be like, good writing. Reads through it. Oh god, I'm dead. God, I am dead. And they take it instead into that show don't tell very quickly in the film. Instead, they cover it in less than 2 minutes. Very efficient. They just show some hobbits smoking, some hobbits playing around, them enjoying food, and just the general culture of it as Gandalf rides his way through the Shire. So extremely efficient. Good for cinema. Perfectly adapted. Then you get the extended cut version where he actually does talk on for about 5-10 minutes about hobbits.
That's what the director's cut, what the uncut version is
Yeah,
for.
the uncut version is scarily long. You go from like 3 3-hour films to like 3 almost 4-hour films. There's just that much added content shoved back in. And it's like, oh god.
It's always magical seeing what gets left on the cutting room floor too. Like what kinds of fat did you have to trim from the particular work before you deliver it for public consumption? Because obviously when you make the first cut, you're like, everything is necessary. This is the whole story. I can't cut any of that out.
Yeah. Like particularly say in more recent, the Dune film. That is a very old sci-fi. So father of sci-fi,
Yes.
functionally.
I haven't watched it. Is it out yet?
Yeah, it should be out internationally now.
It's out. Okay.
Because I've got the book itself just on top of my piano, actually, like next to me. It's written surprisingly well for a piece of its time, in the sense that you can still carry a fair few of the messages forward and whatnot.
For sure.
And like, goddamn, when it came to the adaptation, apparently they did a very, very good job with it. So
Okay, good.
I am looking forward to it myself, because I've got the opportunity to see it now, so I may as well.
Yeah. Me too. I was looking forward to it. I haven't heard any reviews on it, but that does comfort me a little bit. It's always scary walking into the movie theaters. I haven't actually I used to watch a lot of movies in theaters, and I feel like I've just grown very tired of the Hollywood formula in the last few years, and so I haven't actually been proactive about keeping up with like AAA films for a long time. I've been only watching film festival movies for quite a few years now, and it's like exciting knowing that I can return to the movie theaters and watch something that is like on a Hollywood budget and have it be like satisfying in the end.
Let's see. So, in regards to that, Hollywood is more so on the side of playing things safe, I suppose. compared to, say, film festivals and whatnot. We can relate that easily back to the VTuber scene, and just that, yeah, agencies or big name agencies will go for that idol route because it is very popular and very easy to digest. Even shown to a Western audience, it's surprisingly easy to digest still, even. But in comparison, down on the floor of indies, most of them just go wild, go wherever.
Yeah. You can do whatever you want when you're an indie. No agency, no manager breathing down your neck. You kind of curate and form your own image to the public, which is quite exciting, I think. If I think this may relate back to a previous question when you asked me how I feel about the indie VTubing scene.
Sure.
Just wanted to really quickly tack on like another quick note to it.
Hey.
I think that this is more. I think this is more of an observation, not quite a something that is positive or a qualm. It's kind of sits in the middle ground.
All right.
But I think that a lot of like obviously when you're an agency VTuber, it's kind of like even your social media presence is quite curated. You can do whatever you want in the realm of staying in character and creating content and generating interactions. But you might not be able to do things such as talk about your private life, or like talk about certain details about your own life. And I think I see that as a phenomenon in terms of indie VTubing. A lot of people are VTubers, but at the same time they are themselves, and so they will talk about their own private lives, the things that they're going through. I'm personally very careful about it. The most that I choose to reveal are like pictures of my cat because he's cute and I think everyone should look at it. But I don't try to go any further than that just for privacy reasons. But for a lot of people, it's definitely a freedom that they like take advantage of and flex a lot. The indie scene is some people in the indie scene are very, very comfortable with both being a VTuber and also being themselves, the person behind the avatar. And that's really interesting to observe.
For myself, if you look over my Twitter feed, it's mainly either stream announcements, if not the occasional hangover tweet.
Yes, I do see those.
Anyhow,
a connoisseur of mixology and alcohol yourself.
For the most part, yes. Well, we'll get round to that in a bit, I suppose. This next question is, there are 3 common answers to this one. I wonder if you can sidestep them. So, it's the most interview-like question. I honestly do hate asking this one, but it is one that I will ask nonetheless. What are your goals for the future?
Oh. That's also a good question. That's not something I think about very often.
Also, yes, Ryan, hydrate. God.
Oh, yay. I'm going to take a drink of water while I think about my answer as well.
Hey.
I think that I'm finding more like joy and also inspiration from streaming than I previously expected. My original plan in terms of when I first started VTubing in March was that I wanted to get through a list of songs that I've always wanted to two originals, and the rest of the list are all covers. But I wanted to get through all of those songs in terms of like I want to make them very nice productions. I want to be able to make them both like a visual and also an audio treat for everyone, and for them to be something I can put out and be proud of myself in the future for. And so I think my goal is to get through that list, and I've been less productive about that list ever since starting because streaming became something that like was really fun and really inspiring. And also there's like other songs that I've kind of cut into the line for various reasons, but I am working on that list steadily. I do have one of those songs on that list crossed out, and it was the first song I covered. It was Whims of Fate.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm working through that list, and I think I'm not sure if that list will grow. What part of the reason why I kept that list is because there's songs that I personally enjoy that they emotionally resonate with me, and so why I wanted to tackle that list was because before I took that hiatus, it was everything I did was just like it's a little bit embarrassing to admit, but it's very mathematical. It was like looking at like the current season anime, whatever song was like a top lister or whatever anime was the most popular, I'll like cover the opening or ending for that, whichever one's doable for me. If there's a lot of requests for a certain song from my commenters, then I'll do that as well. And it was very devoid of joy. It was very much like, okay, whatever people want, whatever the masses want, I will deliver that for them. And so I wanted to run away from doing that. I wanted to keep a list of things that resonate with me emotionally that I want to tackle. And so I think as soon as I exhaust that list, I think that may be my more concrete VTuber goal.
Fair enough, fair enough. Yes, you did dodge all three of the common answers.
Oh, I want to know the common answers. Can I know them?
Yeah, sure. I actually tell everyone the common ones after.
Yay!
Let's see.
Okay.
First one is normally becoming big, so reaching partner on Twitch or membership on whatever platform.
Oh, yes, that's a huge one, right?
That one tends to be one of the more common ones. The second one tends to be they want to do a 2.0 or re-debut of some kind. Perhaps they're not necessarily satisfied with what they've currently got and want to keep pushing for quality and whatnot. And the third one is doing ASMR content.
Oh,
That one is
that third one took
surprisingly
me off
common.
guard. What?
That one has been common from maybe the first or second interview I've done all the way up to recent.
My gosh, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that I guess first of all that like people haven't dabbled in it. And second of all, I'm shocked that it's like such a it's a category that people are curious about. I definitely had my curiosity about that category when I first started streaming, and I've tried my hand at it a few times now. I'm wary about ASMR in particular. One of my mutuals and friends, Jen Pai, she's a ASMR artist, and I think it's really cute, but she always, whenever she gets a new follower or raids, she introduces herself as a family-friendly ASMR artist. And I've always really respected and liked that because I think it's ASMR is a category that encompasses both family-friendly and the less family-friendly side of things, which is why I'm wary of it. And so I'm still wary of it whenever I dabble in it. It's still a very much like unknown category for me.
Fair enough. I did notice that you had done a stream recently with it. I was like, I'll take a peek. I'm like, oh boy.
It's very I bought a new microphone for it and everything. I think most of my viewers kind of know I'm a bit of a gearhead, and so I'm always looking for excuses to buy new microphones or gear, and so I was really excited to buy that new microphone. And buying it also kind of gives me the excuse to explore that category more.
Fair enough. And Vara, thanks for the gifted sub to ASMR Destiny, buddy. Let me know
Very
later
topical.
about that one. Anyhow. Okay, I may as well throw in that question because I know I did send it to you about equipment and whatnot. I did forget to write it down in this list of questions though, so this will just look like a curveball to anyone else. So what kind of equipment do you actually use in terms of audio production then?
I use two different sets of equipment for streaming and for music. For streaming, I have I think it's a pretty standard setup. I have a SM7B going through a cloud lifter to a Go XLR. I famously always tell people to not get the Go XLR because it's so expensive for what it is. But I do really like it. It is a really nice It is a really nice soundboard. Um, for for my recording side of things, I have a I always need to I actually need to I have two of them and they look exactly the same, so I need to check which one I have. I have the Bluebird and um the Spark, and I think it's the Bluebird that I'm using right now. I need to really
Bluebird.
I am using I am using the Bluebird. So I'm using the Bluebird going through the Audient ID4 for music. My Spark is still around. I haven't gotten around to selling it yet. It was also my first XLR condenser microphone, and so I kind of have like emotional attachment to it. I don't ever take it out and use it anymore, but I just have it in its box because I love it. But I have the Bluebird going through the Audient ID4, and with the I think the brand, I can't remember what the brand is called, but it's a isolation shield. It's called the Halo. I have one of those for sound treatment.
Yeah, yeah. As Raina mentioned, funny that you mentioned the Bluebird.
Oh, do you have a story about it? I'm looking forward to that.
Somewhat. Let's see. So Raina and I were just going through particular microphones that we've heard of in the past and whatnot, and we ended up looking at some of the Blue selection, and she had to point out the Bluebird. I was like, it sounds like it'd be like a snowball or something when she described it, and she was like, no, something completely different. I take a look at it and I'm like, oh god, what is that thing?
They look very similar in shape. There's a third microphone, I think, with a black body that is in the same line of Blue microphones. I can't remember what the name is. They all look, so the Spark Bluebird and that third microphone with the black body look almost identical to each other, except for like the finish and the color on them.
Yeah.
But they're at vastly different price points. I can't remember what the black one's called. It's killing me. I gotta look it up.
Go for it.
Oh, it does not help that the Spark now comes in black. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Please. It's the baby bottle. That's why it had a stupid name. It's
That's
called the
what
baby
it was.
bottle.
Ah, god. Because, yeah, damn, that is... I will say, for streaming setup, that is very much on the premium end of things. Good lord.
It is, yeah. I'm really, whenever people ask me about my setup, I'm almost like a little bit hesitant to tell them what it is, because I don't want someone, especially if they're starting out, to look at write it down and then buy all of that, because spending all of that money when you haven't done any kind of audio production or any streaming is not going to be beneficial. It's a lot of money to spend on things you don't understand. And so very recently I did like an audio quality 101 or audio gear 101 stream for a lot of like frequently asked questions, just to clear up a lot of things. And like, I think that just the basic statement, the basic message I wanted to get out was just like, familiarize yourself with EQ and compression. Even if you're not getting into audio production, even if you're just a streamer, like learn that, because it's going to benefit you a lot. When you learn how to EQ your own audio and your voice well, and you buy a affordable microphone, even if you had a snowball, if you were able to apply like a nice EQ filter on that, you're going to sound fantastic. People are not going to believe you have a snowball.
I've run into that
But
occasion
I've also been at this
times,
for like more than a decade, so...
oh boy.
I think it's like not... just again, I don't want anyone to get into stuff and buy exactly what I have. Like, this is all accumulated from like more than 10, 11 years of just being a hobbyist. So don't buy anything that I have without first understanding it, please. Please.
Because the nice thing about audio equipment, at the very least, if you buy it once, generally you won't need to buy anything else, because typically audio equipment lasts and is actually decently resellable. Even at times, you may even turn a profit later down the line, depending on what kind of microphone you picked up.
Adina is making a really, really good point too. We talked about this during the audio gear stream. It depends on voice type. I have a voice that really sits well and works with the SM7B. It may not work nearly as well for a voice that's like very different from mine in quality. So look around, shop around.
let's say the particular example that Raina and I ended up bouncing between was the use of an AT2020, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the AT2020 particularly works for myself because of my tone, it would not necessarily be all too great for Raina, as she claimed, mainly because it does play around a lot more with the higher frequencies.
Yes, yes. Raina is saying, so I have experience with the AT2020. I found it to be like a very hot mic in terms of the higher frequencies, and that was my main reason for switching it out too. I had it for a very brief time, and I really didn't like my experience with it. But it's not like I know it is like almost an industry standard for starting points in terms of hobbyist audio, and so I'm not gonna like say don't get it. But if anyone were to say I'm about to get the AT2020, I would just warn them about that exact same point that Aina has mentioned.
Hey. For myself, it was more a case of, I need a large diaphragm condenser mic, because that was one of the things missing in my arsenal of microphones. So I was like, you know what, 2020 will do. Because
What are you using right now? Just out of curiosity, can I throw the question back at you again?
It is just an AT2020 hooked up to a Rodecaster Pro.
Oh.
There is a whole bunch of random filters and EQs that I've shoved on this thing just to get it sounding more pleasant. But yeah, generally speaking,
do you use
software?
Software audio? Do you use like voice? Is it Voice Meter or Voice Mod? Do you use either of those?
No, not necessarily. Most of this is either stock that comes with the Rodecaster or stock that comes with OBS in general.
That's right.
I do have a EQ, let's say EQ plugin for OBS as well, and that's mainly just to ease off a couple of the more troublesome frequencies. Like not keep it from being.
The Rodecaster is really interesting.
The Rodecaster is interesting. It is pretty much a 4-channel mixer, with the caveat of not necessarily being all too great for instrumentals unless you do decide to play around with it a lot more. In the case of this, if I wanted to hook up my keyboard to it more competently, I'd need to get myself a DI box and a couple more cables. Else the signal comes off as extremely hot.
Yeah. Do you make use of the? I know that it has like a mobile input fader. Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah.
Do you make use of that at all?
That one's a weird one. So, in a broadcast scenario, or if you were on radio, sometimes you're asked to just put on your own soundtrack or whatever. Because if you need background music for an interview, hopefully you've got something that's like non-credit or whatnot, so you can just shove that in the back. That is generally where this kind of function would come in. Just in the sense of if you wanted to plug in your mobile phone, or if you needed to take a call from someone, and then put the call through.
Oh, that's so interesting. Wow.
The way we did interviews during COVID was they were phone call based. So you would actually have someone call in. We'd put them on monitoring and we'd chat to them a bit while music was still going. We'd tell them, oh yeah, here's the rundown. Sorry, at the end of this, we are going to have to hang up on you. We're not being mean, it's just the only option we've got, so apologies in advance. We can't do the follow-up as we usually would. And
Interesting.
then
do you find any use of it in streaming at all?
So far, no, I haven't had to need to take a phone call.
Yeah.
If I ever do, though, that is an option, I guess.
It would be kind of exciting.
Yeah. It'd be strange to take a phone call that way, though, in comparison.
Yes, it would be.
There is only one interviewee in future that I may do that for.
Ooh, exciting.
That is very likely very long down the line, though.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it all the same.
Because, yeah, that one would just be... So you know how you had your own bucket list of sorts of covers and whatnot to get through? I've got my own list of interviewees that I am wanting to get through.
Oh.
So for that one specifically, that one is a cousin of mine, which is deep into the animation side of things.
Ah.
Or deep into animation and zines, essentially.
Zines. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she ended up moderating quite a few of them. Good lord, quite a few of them. And we are getting another stretch.
Yay, thank you, Yuu.
Okay. As for the other two, a music producer and my model rigger and artist.
Oh my goodness, that would be really, really fun.
Both of them, while I didn't necessarily go to university with them, I hung around with them a lot during university.
Okay.
The particular two in that case is Cayman Paul and Zomu EDM. Zomu is still one crack to sell music producer, and good lord. Man's stuff has seen like millions upon millions of views, and how does one put it? The guy puts all his stuff up for free, pretty much. Most of his work is under Creative Commons.
Yeah. I think that's I honestly think that kind of content creation model is like very much to my liking and something that I would like to sort of follow in the path of as well. I think that like content creation is a career for sure, and it's something that depending on your choices, you can choose to monetize and like make a living off of it, and make it become your full-time job. But I personally don't. I guess it's just I don't really know how to explain it. I think I just like enjoy putting out content for the sake of making it exist. And there's the pleasure for me is just bringing it into existence. And once I've brought it into existence, whether or not there is profit to be gained from it is completely up to the consumers. And if they would like to give me money for what I make, I'm thankful, and I would like to funnel it back to more content creation. And if they don't, I want them to still be able to enjoy it all the same.
Fair enough in that regard, fair enough. The beauty of content creation is just bringing something to life, I suppose. Taking it from your head, putting it to paper, or taking it to your head and turning it into a recording.
That's very much we mentioned a little bit about like how in the community oftentimes there nuance is lost in conversations, and I think this is one of the topics where nuance is definitely lost in a lot of conversations regarding content creation as a hobby or as a career. Lots of people have very strong opinions about whether or not you should be paid for content, or even if you should be like charging for the content that you put out. And I think it's very much a personal journey. I think you can practice whatever you feel comfortable with, and people outside of that should not have an opinion on what you decide to do with your own content. But obviously, like if you receive help in content creation, such as when I commission artists or animators or other musicians, I want to compensate them for their work. But in the end, what I put out, whether or not I want to profit from that, is my decision.
In which case, yeah, it's the argument of honest pay for honest work versus appreciation, so to speak. It's that kind of aspect you run into, let's see, so this is kind of odd, but specifically when busking, actually.
Okay.
Okay, so the way I used to relate back VTubing or streaming is functionally as a small content creator, you'll have people walking past your stream. If they like it, they'll stick around to listen. If not, then they go their separate way, no loss to you, so to speak. Same deal with busking.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's exactly like busking.
So you are broadcasting to the air, essentially. Same sense in busking, you're taking up that air space with your own music, your own singing, whatever it may be that you are performing. On the internet, there is functionally infinite space, however.
Yes.
So on the off chance someone does wander into your stream, on the off chance that someone does come in and speak up, that's kind of amazing. Because the chances of that happening are so minuscule, and there is no physical space to have encouraged it or anything. Yet nonetheless, you are busking no longer to the space, but busking to the void, functionally, is what streaming is.
That's actually so interesting. I have experienced busking too. So like, you just gave me like a big brain, galaxy brain moment here. I was like, oh, you're exactly right. That is exactly but like the physical space limiters too, because we used to have to I've never gotten into any kerfuffles with other bands, but I've seen other bands get into arguments with each other about like whether or not they should have the space this weekend, or if they reserved it early enough, or yada yada. And also sometimes some spaces are just like physically better in terms of affordances of getting audiences. They may be closer to a certain shop that gets a lot of traffic. They may be nestled in an area that is like conductive for foot traffic to stop and stare and listen for a little while. All of those limiters make busking kind of an experience that's dependent on where you are. But in terms of streaming, you're just busking in like in space. You've just set up you've set up your bar, or I've set up my host club in a sort of like dark corner of the internet, and then when people drop by, it's really quite a meaningful experience.
So in that sense, yeah, content creation in the way of streaming is carving out and creating that particular space for people to happen to wander into. Yeah, in regards to busking locations, for myself, there was just one particular place I'd always aim for, and it was, so there's this big crosswalk in the middle of like Sydney Town Hall. It's next to a certain bookshop. This bookshop is one of the few places you could buy manga, light novels, that kind of stuff en masse, pretty much.
Oh.
So since I played a lot of weeb music, usually, yeah, I would aim for that location because that would be where target audience would be, pretty much.
Very strategic. I love that.
Well, that crosswalk was very popular, mainly because it is one of the biggest in Sydney, therefore you will have a lot of ears on you regardless.
Interesting. Wow. Very big brain move of you.
And yes, VTubing is functionally busking in space, and when people do stop by, it is roughly that same feeling. If people decide to just listen in, or if people throw a donation or a sub or whatever, pretty much the same.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for like gift subs and donations every now and then. They always take me off guard, but it really is the same feeling as back when we like busked, and then somebody decided to like just the sheer joy of knowing someone took time out of their day to stop and listen and interact with you. Some people would come up and have conversations with us. One of the things that we see the most often back when we busked was people love, and I don't know, this is like a common experience wherever we went, like no matter where you are, people love to give their money to their children and get them to drop it off in your guitar case. And like I know that when I was a child, I've done the same thing. My uncle's been like, here's $5, go give it to that guitarist there. It's just like a common thing. No matter where I go, children are always tasked with throwing money into your guitar case. What a pleasant memory. I haven't thought about that in a while.
For myself, it was mainly high schoolers, which were just like, oh, he's playing that theme song, okay. Goes over, tosses a bit of cash over. It's like, hey, good stuff, good stuff. Like, yep. Continues playing whatever song it was. Alright, let's say then. I suppose let's get to the more final questions that I normally ask in these kinds of interviews. These next two are somewhat connected to each other. Very simple questions, usually, depending. Some people have an instant answer to these, some people take maybe 5-10 minutes to finally come to one.
Wow, okay.
So first one, recommend a drink, any drink. Doesn't necessarily have to be alcoholic, just something that you would recommend to people.
Oh, I am a hobbyist in terms of like bartending and getting into mixology as well. And so if I were to recommend a drink, I think everybody should give a nice, clean, cold martini a try. I think that's such a it's so hard to like I hope that when you give that a try, you're going to a bartender that you trust, that can make your drink really well, because the martini is so deceptively simple, but so hard to get right. you want it to be nice and cold first of all. Um, you want it to be like nicely stirred. You don't want any like ice chunks still in there after it comes out into the coupe glass. The way it's served really matters as well. And so if you're looking for a drink that you want to have like a new experience or a new impression of, get a martini, get a nice clean straight martini stirred, and make sure you're ordering it from someone that you trust. Or if you're making it yourself, make sure you're very strict with yourself. I have not personally made myself a martini that I think tastes good. It's so hard. It's a very simple drink, and that's why it's so hard. There's very little margin for error. But yeah, I would recommend. I think martinis are kind of bold, but I think everyone needs to try it once and like try a good one too.
Yes, martini is a drink with a lot of nuance, just in that small little bits of preparation. It also highlights just how little aspects of expression can change the impression that you get out of a cocktail. So for example,
Yeah.
just how you treat the glass, or if you decide to include an olive or not, for instance, making it a
Yes,
dirty
exactly.
martini, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
It's less down to the particular ingredients you use, though it does matter, but more so down to the bartender's actual skill. So it is
Yes.
somewhat a rough drink to recommend in that sense, I guess, but at the same time, it is a good litmus test for a bartender to see what kind of
It
skills
is.
they've got.
I think a lot of their personality shows up when they make a martini as well. If you have a very experienced bartender who kind of like knows what they're doing and they're very comfortable behind the bar, they'll make one for you that's very characteristic to how they like to handle drinks. And I always enjoy ordering like a nice martini from a bartender that I trust, because I get to kind of taste like their own personal touch on it. It's really such a such a great drink in terms of like you can put your own impression on it, but not too much. It doesn't change the drink fundamentally.
Yeah, it's a very expressive drink in that regard.
Hmm.
Also, the funny stories I have with martinis is if you ever go into a bottle shop, if you look a particular way, they'll say, oh, pull out some ID and whatnot. Make sure you're of age to drink. Me, I've got something of a baby face, kind of, so I get carded pretty often. But
Oh.
the one particular drink that you will almost never get carded for is if you order vermouth.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yes, no,
Who would just like buy vermouth?
pretty much.
Unless you didn't know what it was. In which case then maybe you should get carded, or you know what you're doing.
But vermouth is just one of those things where it's just like, oh, I see. You actually kind of know your drinks. Because most of the time, if you order, say, a party drink, say you go for soju, vodka, or just try and pick up some beers over here, then yeah, normally you'll get carded. It's just like, buddy, all right,
Yeah.
here's your ID, blah, blah, blah. All right, go for it. If you order black spirits or just stuff that's out there, they're just like, okay, you clearly are going for something specific. Sure. And the particular ingredients for a martini are those which are the easiest to get away with, I suppose. Because
Yeah.
you will rarely bring gin to a party, and you'll rarely
No,
bring
yeah, that's
vermouth to
true.
a party either.
I think vermouth and like Campari as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Campari is kind of like why would you get Campari if you're not like making a Negroni or something similar? Why would you just drink it on its own? Vermouth and Campari are what come to mind in terms of like if you buy it, they'll want to assume you either are clueless or you are very clueful.
Yeah, it's the same with a lot of like classic cocktail mixes. So say if for whatever reason you're buying Aperol, then clearly you're probably just making an Aperol spritz. And that's it.
Yes.
There are specific spirits and just whatnot where it's like, oh, yeah, there's only one or two things you can do with this stuff. For instance, if someone decides to order some green chartreuse, and it's like, oh, I see. You're likely making something very classic because green chartreuse is bloody expensive. And there are not very many good substitutes for it. The one specific drink I bring up when it comes to green chartreuse is what's called a last word.
Oh, I love the last word. Yes.
Yes, the last word. So normally it's meant to be your classic sour drink, I suppose, a decent like nightcap. It is, it's ideally meant for, oh, last thing you drink tonight, take a last word, go to sleep, you know? Or just start heading back, it's going to wake you up. The way my favorite bar prepares it, it has a very distinct taste to it instead. So normally you think sour, goes down easily. This one burns and tastes kind of gravelly.
Oh, nice.
The way
Puts you right to sleep. Very comforting.
It doesn't necessarily relax you, it wakes you up though. And whenever I drink out with friends, if I'm going to that particular bar, I will order one specifically just to throw them off. Because the easiest way to describe this, it's like you're tasting either the grass or you're tasting the compost.
Yum.
So I normally just hand it to the other fella and it's like, hey, you want to try my drink? And normally if they have no idea what it is, they're like, yeah, sure, why not? Looks cool. I'm like, yeah, certainly is. Yeah. They'll take the sip, they'll take one look back at me and you're like, you're drinking grass. I'm like,
You're drinking?
I know.
That's what I love about it.
I don't know. It's become a weird flavor that I got attached to. Just that bar's specific last word, and it's like,
Oh,
sure.
Have you been able to recreate that yourself?
The ingredients are pretty bloody expensive. When I looked over the list that they used, I'm like, I'll try it someday, but maybe once I've got a bit more of a pocket for it, because normally
That's one of the reasons why I would recommend if you were trying a martini is just to go out there and get it from a bar that you trust, is because like buying 3 bottles of spirits is going to cost you more, and you might not know how to put the drink together as much or as well as like a experienced bartender can. If you want to pay a little bit more for one drink and pay them for their expertise, like you should definitely do that.
Let's see, most of the stuff I mix at home tends to be more related to ginger ale, actually, of all things.
Like a dark and stormy.
Not necessarily. The ones I mix they have odd names usually. The more well-known one is the Moscow Mule. That one is just get a copper mug, vodka, vodka, maybe a dash of simple syrup, and then just ginger ale, add some mint. You're done, pretty much. It's a very refreshing drink, a very easily accessible one.
Super delicious.
The other one I mix is a much more difficult one. It's a tiki drink. Goes by the name of the Suffering Bastard.
A tiki drink. I'm interested. What is in it?
So, Suffering Bastard, it is an ounce of gin, an ounce of scotch, Angostura bitters, 2 dashes, a lot of mint to garnish, lime juice, about an ounce as well, and then top with ginger ale.
That sounds yummy. That sounds really good. That's a lot of lime juice.
Yes, it is a fair bit. It was made in Cairo, in a certain hotel, and was meant to ease the woes of certain soldiers during World War II.
Oh.
A drink for these suffering bastards. Then there was a variation called the Dying Bastard.
Oh.
That one you switched in some bourbon too. I have decidedly drunk both on stream, and every time I drink those on stream, oh boy. It's an experience. It's an experience.
It is a good time.
They go down very smoothly. You don't necessarily taste the alcohol content all too strongly. It's a pretty sweetish, kind of sourish drink, sort of. And
That's the thing about tiki
refreshing.
drinks. That always deceptive in how alcoholic they are.
Yeah. This one's pretty nasty in that sense, and each time I've done them on stream, it's been, yes, it's definitely been an experience.
I want to try the Dying Bastard. I'm very, very partial to bourbon, and so I want to give that a try sometime.
Oh, yeah. But bourbon's nice. I'm normally more in Scotch, I guess, but recently tried out bourbons more often and was like, why was I avoiding these for so long? I think it was mainly because some bourbons they decide to like mix honey in, and it's not a flavor I do too well with, for whatever reason.
Oh yes, that's right.
Because yeah, generally they go down smoothly, but if there's honey involved, I just don't have a great reaction to it usually.
Oh no.
Anyhow, on to the second half of this question. Very simple. Likewise, recommend some food. Any food whatsoever.
Oh, this one will take a little longer, I think. Let me think. Recommend a food. Okay, recommend a food.
Could just be comfort food, something luxurious, up to you.
This is something kind of to do with I had a chat with a friend about this very recently, and so it's fresh on my mind. When I was little, I was born in and I grew up in a fishing village
Oh, damn.
in the boonies. Very, very small town. It's very close to the airport, and so lots of flat land all around the village. Not very many people in the small town, and a lot of the time, the all the fishermen would like get together and drink and have seafood around the end of their workday. And so I grew up eating a lot of seafood, and I really, really liked eating in terms of like crustaceans. If we're talking about like lobsters and crab, I when I was a kid, and even now I think I just don't get the opportunity to eat seafood nearly as much now. But I really like eating lobster or crab tomali. So like they're like quote unquote guts, but I think it's technically their gonads.
Oh my.
It's the stuff in the shell. It's like the green stuff. I think it usually is green after you cook it. After I moved to Canada, I realized it was a part of the seafood that people just throw away. Like most people want the crab meat and they want like the lobster tail. That was more valued
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in North America. And I thought that was super weird because my favorite part was like the stuff they were throwing away. And so if you have an opportunity to cook and eat your own seafood at home, I think you should try that out, everyone. I think that crustacean tamale is actually a delicacy and you should change your minds about it.
Interesting, interesting.
Kani miso, yes, Sunny. Kani miso. It's called kani miso in Japanese. Kind of like crab brain, except it's not quite. I think it's because it's inside their shells, and so most of the time people assume it's their like brain or their innards. I think that it is technically their gonads. I can't be sure what scientifically or biologically it is.
Fair enough, fair
But it's
enough.
called kani miso in Japanese.
Fair enough. Alright then. That more or less brings this interview to a close then.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me today.
Likewise, thanks for being a guest on this interview.
Yeah, I had I really really like all of the wait, go over that with me. Was it likability, relatability, competence, and what was the third one?
Okay, so it
terms
was relatability, proactiveness, and
Oh, proactiveness.
and then competence.
Right, it was proactiveness. I need to remember. I think this is like one of the biggest takeaways from this stream for me is all this like characterization writing knowledge that I've never been exposed to. I'm so passionate about like media and about like art and movies, everything about like visual media as like an art form. But I know so little about it, so I'm always really, really excited to be taught more.
Fair enough, fair enough. Alright then. Let's see. Who do I want to send this raid off to, in which case?
Yeet us over, Echo. Thanks for coming, you guys. Thank you, Fish. Thank you, Issa. Seafood is awesome, Nawe.
Alright. I've got someone in mind. They were one of my earliest interviews that I did, and along the longer sides, I suppose.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. You have a good rest of your night. Jowser, it was nice to meet you.
This interview went particularly for 4 hours, the time that I did it. Good lord.
4? Oh my god.
It's actually not the longest one I've done. The longest I've done is 6 hours, and that one was a pretty recent one, actually.
Holy. Sasori, otsukare. Thank you for coming, Sunny. It was a really educational interview, wasn't it?
It does fall into that vein of the old stuff I did on radio, I suppose.
Yeah, I honestly don't see very many people coming from that field, so it's always refreshing to hear people's experiences in fields that I'm not familiar with.
Fair enough, fair enough. Anyhow, thanks everyone for swinging by. I will send you off to a certain captain at this point.
Take care, everyone.
Alright.